Hi, my name's Rob Percival, and in the next 20 minutes I'm going to show you how to make an app called How Many Fingers for the new up-and-coming Apple Watch. I'm the creator of the Complete Web Developer course, the best-selling and the best-reviewed course ever on udemy.com, and also the Complete iOS 8 and Swift course, which is quickly catching it up. I'm also running a Kickstarter at the moment for my Complete Apple Watch Developer course, and feel free to go on there and check out the Kickstarter and get the course for just £15 right now. So where do you start? You start by downloading Xcode. If you just Google how to download Xcode, you'll get to this page. The version that you want for Apple Watch is version 6.2. Now you'll need to be an Apple developer to get the 6.2 version. So I'm going to sign in to get the download, but it's completely free. If you're not already registered as an Apple developer, then you can just sign up right there and get the download. It's a pretty big file, so it'll take a while to download, but once it's done, just install it in the usual way. Once you've done the install, just press Command and Space to open Spotlight, and then just start typing Xcode. If you've got the other version of Xcode installed, you'll need to make sure that you click Xcode Beta to get the beta version that you've just installed onto your Mac. Then double click and wait for Xcode to appear in the top left, and then just click File, New, Project. Now you may be aware that at this stage Apple Watch apps are not standalone. They need to be attached to an iPhone or iPad app. An iPhone app. So we'll start by setting up our iPhone app. So I'm just going to click iOS application and single view application. We're not actually going to be doing any iOS development here, but we need to create it anyway. So as I mentioned at the beginning, we're going to call this How Many Fingers. I'm not going to put a question mark at the end because that can mess things up. In the organization name, you can put anything you like. The organization identifier is normally com dot and then your company name, whatever that might be, but it really doesn't matter. And then make sure you choose Swift for the language, iPhone for the device, and it doesn't actually matter, but we'll switch off core data because we don't need it. Then click Next. I'm just going to save it right into my desktop. And then that'll get you here, which is the main Xcode development window. I'm not going to go into this in great detail, but essentially we've got our file structure on the left here, we've got some information about our app in the middle, and on the right we've got a bar which is context sensitive, so it will change depending on what we've got selected at the time. So we're going to jump straight into the Apple Watch side of things, and we're going to click Editor, Add Target, which will allow us to create our Watch app. So you need to click Apple Watch under iOS and then click Watch App. And then click Next. And I wouldn't change anything there. Leave it all as is. And then that will set up your app to work with Apple Watch. And you can see we've got two important new folders here. We've got the How Many Fingers WatchKit extension. WatchKit is the name of the development kit for Apple Watch. And we've also got this Watch App folder there as well. And the two files that we're going to be particularly interested in are the storyboard file, which is a graphical representation of what actually appears on the watch interface, so you can see the watch right there. And we're also going to be looking at interfacecontroller.swift, which will allow us to do a little bit of coding to make our app work. So before we start building our app, let me just tell you how it's going to work. We're going to have a button which, whenever you press, picks a random number from 0 to 5. So the idea is that it simulates the game of holding a certain number of fingers up behind your back and then revealing that number to your friend. So you guess the number and then you find out whether or not you're correct. So we're going to drag two interface elements onto our storyboard here. And we do that by going down here. If this circle with a square inside is not selected, then make sure you click on that and then start typing button, and you'll see that this button appears. So we just drag that onto the interface and you can see that it sizes it up nicely. So now we've got the button selected, you can see we've got lots of options here. If you can't see those, make sure you click on that shape there, the attributes inspector, and we can change the title, color, font, all sorts of things about that button. All I'm going to change is the button text or the title, and I'm just going to type tap to reveal and then press enter, and you can see that's changed the text of the button. Okay. The other thing we're going to use is a label. So just type label in the search bar there and then drag in our label. This is where our number's going to go. So I'm just going to drag it into that area. For our label, I want it to be centered. So I'm going to change the position to be centered horizontally and centered vertically. You're very welcome to play around with the colors and the size and alignment and everything like that, but I'm not going to bother with that now. Okay, so now we've got the building blocks of our app, we're going to start making it do something. And as I mentioned, we're going to do that with interface controller.swift. So let's have a quick look at this. It looks a bit scary when you first see it, but it's absolutely fine. I'm going to talk you through the whole thing. This is the Swift language, if you haven't seen it before, the new Apple language released in 2014. And essentially what we've got here are three methods or functions, or essentially just chunks of code that happen at a certain time. So here we've got our init method, and anything in this chunk of code will happen when the app begins, when it's initiated. This chunk of code is the willActivate method, which is run every time the app is just about to be revealed to the user. And then this method, or this chunk of code, is run every time the app is deactivated or closed down. We're actually not interested in these two, so I'm just going to get rid of those, and we don't need this log either. So I'm going to keep it very simple, and that's all the code we're going to work with. Now I'm going to show you a couple of ways that you can play with the Xcode interface and make life easier for yourself. First of all, we're going to get rid of this right bar here. And I can do that by clicking that. In fact, if I want to, I can get rid of the left bar as well to give myself more room to work with. But I'm going to bring that in. And here, I'm now going to click on the two circles, which brings in the Assistant Editor, which will allow us to have two windows open at once. So I've got my interface controller.swift on the left. On the right, I'm going to have my storyboard, which I created earlier. I'm now just going to click this little button here to get rid of those labels because I don't need those. I just want to see the interface controller right there. And now I don't need the left menu anymore, so I'm just going to have these two. Okay, so we need a way to communicate between the label and the button that we've set up over here and our chunk of code over here. And it's very easy to do that in Xcode. You just control click and then drag over, and you get this blue line, and I'm going to drag into just above that override method. And then I'm going to let go. So I just pressed control and dragged over from the button to the method just above override there. And I'm going to change this, what's called a connection, to an action. And essentially this action will then happen every time that button is tapped. So I'm just going to call it button tapped. You can really call it whatever you like, but the convention is that you have it all as one word, but after the first word, each word is capitalized. And then I'm going to tap connect, and this creates another chunk of code, a function or method, and anything between those curly brackets will be executed, will be run every time the button is tapped. So what do I want to do when the button is tapped? Well, what I want to do is update this label here, and I want to give it a random number. So I need a way to refer to that label. So I do exactly the same, control drag, and this time I'm going to drag just above that chunk of code there. This time I can't have an action because this is just a label, and you can't tap a label, so we're just going to have what's known as an outlet, which will allow me to refer to that label. So I'm going to call it number label because that's the label which is going to contain the number of fingers that the watch is metaphorically holding up for us. Okay, so before we get into the slightly complicated code of creating a random number, for now let's just update the label to anything we like when the button is tapped. So remember, this chunk of code is run whenever that button is tapped. So to refer to the label, remember I called it number label up here, so I just start typing number label, and Xcode knows what I mean, so I can just click return, and then it predicts number label for me. And what do I want to do with number label? I want to set the text to something. So for now, I'll just change it to hi. So make sure you get that exactly right. It needs to be number label dot set text with a capital T. You should get that if you use the auto predict anyway. And then in brackets, you put hi, and that has to be in double quotes there. Okay, so now we're going to run this app and see if it works. To make sure I get the watch app, I need to click down there. It doesn't really matter what I use for my phone, but I need to click the watch app version, and then I'll click iPhone 6. And then I'm going to press the triangle to run my app. You can also use Command R to run your app as a shortcut code. It may well take a few seconds depending on how fast your machine is. And here we go. You can see I've got my iPhone simulator up there. I've got nothing else. You may be able to see the Apple Watch already, but if you can't, then just click Hardware, External Displays, and then choose one of the Apple Watch screen sizes. I'll go for the larger of the two, 42mm. There it is. Now you can see the Apple Watch. Now that I've loaded that, I have to run it again. So let's bring it back. And there we go. There's our app with our tap to reveal button. And then when I tap it or click it, my label is updated to hi. So if you managed to make that work, congratulations. That's your first interactive Apple Watch app, but it doesn't do anything that exciting. So let's get our random number system working. So over here, I am going to want that bit of code, so I'll leave that there and we'll update it in a minute. So we need to be able to create a random number. Now don't worry, this is a slightly complicated function, but I'll talk you through it. We're going to create a variable, which in Swift you do using var or var, short for variable, and we'll call it random number using the same naming convention, random in small letters, and then every other word after that is capitalized. So we've created a variable called random number, and we're going to set that equal to, and we're going to use a function called arc for random underscore uniform. So don't worry too much about what arc for random means, but essentially this is going to create a random number for us, and we want a number between 0 and 5 because that's how many metaphorical fingers our watch is going to have. So we put a 5 there. So that will create a random number between 0 and 5 for us. One slight complication is in Swift, variables have what's known as a type. So this would be a number type, the arc for random underscore uniform. In fact, it would be a uint32, but don't worry too much about that. Essentially, it's a number. And this is a string of numbers and letters, which is a type of string. So what we're going to do to get around that is we're going to convert our number into a string. And we do that simply using the string function. I don't need any prediction there. So there we go. So that will convert our number into a string type variable. And then we can just replace our hi with our variable. So random number. There we go. That's it. So now you can just press play again. And now every time we tap the tap to reveal button, we'll get a random number. So you could spend many a happy hour playing guess the number of fingers that your watch has got behind its back. Let's check it out. Here we go. So I'm going to tap to reveal. There we go. We got a 1, we got a 4, we got a 3, and a 1 again, etc., etc. You get the idea. So the only slight change I'm going to make is I didn't like the fact that it had a label at the beginning there. That didn't look good. So all we need to do to get rid of that is just get rid of the text completely on label, and then let's run it for a final time. And this time we should see that it's blank initially, and then it just changes to the number when you tap the button. And there we go. We've got a nice blank screen apart from the button, and then when we tap, you can see we get our random number. Great, so I hope you enjoyed making your first Apple Watch app. If you want to learn more, the best way is to join my Apple Watch Kickstarter. If you join at the £39 pledge level, then you'll get early beta access, so you get the videos as soon as I make them. Or it's just £15 to get the full course when it's released in time with the Apple Watch. Or you can get ahead and join my iOS and Swift course. There are 20% off vouchers in the description, and also the web developer course, which also has a discount voucher in the description. I hope you enjoyed that, and I hope to see you on one of my courses soon.